Polynomial functions. Create formulas with directly and indirectly. What are they? Polynomial functions are expressions that contain non-negative powers with varying degrees, coefficients, and constants. Why? Helps to see if your roller coaster will function. Interesting fact, platypuses do not have a stomach. Its gullet goes directly to its intestines. Now, let's look at some terminology. We have two options here. The first one is y varies directly as x, or y is directly proportional to x, where the general formula is y is equal to b times x. And for an example we have c is equal to 2 pi times r, where c is the circumference of a circle, r is the radius, and b is equal to 2 pi. And the second option is y varies inversely as x, or y is inversely proportional to x, where the general formula is y is equal to b over x. And for an example we have d is equal to m over v, where d is the density of an object, m is the mass, and v is the volume. Now, let's take a look at the guidelines for solving variation problems. The first one is, write a general formula that involves the variables in a constant of variation or proportion, or b, or any letter. The second one is, find the value of b in guideline 1 by substituting the initial data given in the statement. The third one is, substitute the value of b in guideline 2 into the formula of guideline 1, obtaining a specific formula that involves the variables. And the fourth one is, use the new data to solve the problem. Now, let's take a look at the examples we're going to discuss in today's video. Let's take a closer look at example 1. Now, let's read the steps. Step 1, directly multiplies with the constant. Step 2, indirectly divides with the constant. Step 3, solve for the constant. Step 4, write the new equation. Now, let's read the question. Write the following as a formula with the variables and a constant b. Find the constant. W varies directly as v, and varies indirectly as to the square of n. If v is equal to 8 and n is equal to 2, then w is equal to 10. Now, let's set up our equation. So we know w is equal to b times something. And why is that? Because it says y varies. Varies is like an equal sign. And we always have a constant, in this case b. And we have a division bar because it says indirectly in the question. So what do we think goes in the numerator, v or the square of n? That is correct, v, because it follows the word directly, which means n squared goes in the denominator, because it follows the word indirectly. Now that we have set up the equation with variables, let's find the constant. So let's substitute 8 for each v, 2 for each n, and 10 for each w. So now we have 10 is equal to b times 8 over 2 squared, and 2 squared is 4, and 8 over 4 is 2. So now we have 10 is equal to b times 2. So let's divide each side by 2. So now we have b is equal to 5. Unfortunately, we are not done yet. What do we think is the last step? That is correct. We have to substitute 5 for b into our first equation with the variables, so we can find any w we want. That is example 1. Let's move on to example 2. Now, let's read the question. Write the following as a formula with the variables and a constant b. Find the constant. W varies directly as the sum of 2x and t, and varies indirectly as to the square root of h. If x is equal to 3, t is equal to negative 34, and h is equal to 49, then w is equal to 5. Now, let's set up our equation. So we know w is equal to b times something. And why is that? Because it says y varies. Varies is like an equal sign, and we always have a constant, in this case b, and we have a division bar because it says indirectly in the question. So what do we think goes in the numerator? The sum of 2x and t, or the square root of h? That is correct, the sum of 2x and t, because it follows the word directly, which means the square root of h goes in the denominator, because it follows the word indirectly. Now that we set up the equation with variables, let's find the constant. So let's substitute 3 for each x, negative 34 for each t, 49 for each h, and 5 for each w. So now we have 5 is equal to 5 times 2 times 3 plus negative 34 all over the square root of 49. Let's multiply. 2 times 3 is 6, and the square root of 49 is 7. So now we have 5 is equal to b times 6 minus 34 all over 7. And 6 minus 34 is negative 28. So now we have 5 is equal to b times negative 28 all over 7. And negative 28 all over 7 is negative 4. So now we have 5 is equal to b times negative 4. So let's divide each side by negative 4. So b is equal to negative 5 all over 4. Unfortunately, we are not done yet. What do we think is the last step? That is correct. We have to substitute negative 5 all over 4 for b into our first equation with the variables, so we can find any w we want. That is example 2. Let's move on to example 3. Now, let's read the question. The range r of a projectile is directly proportional to the square of its velocity v. A. Express r as a function of v as a formula that involves a constant of proportionality b. B. A car enthusiast Joy jumps her car 120 feet. If the speed of the car off the ramp was 60 miles per hour, find the value of b. C. For the next jump, Joy wants to go 80 miles per hour. How far will the car go? Let's start with A. This time, we don't have the words w varies, but we do have r as a function of v, just like f of x, where we have y as a function of x, where x is the input and y is the output. So in this case, v is our input, which means r is our output. So basically, r is first, and we set it equal to b, the constant of variation times something. What do we think we put next to that multiplication sign? That is correct, v squared, and that is a. Let's move on to b. Let's read it again. A car enthusiast, Joy, jumps her car 120 feet. If the speed of the car off the ramp was 60 miles per hour, find the value of b. R is our range, so how many feet the car goes? 120 in this case, and 60 miles per hour is velocity. So let's substitute 120 for each r and 60 for each v. So now we have 120 is equal to b times 60 squared. Let's multiply. 60 squared is 3,600. So now we have 120 is equal to b times 3,600. Let's divide both sides by 3,600. So now we have 120 all over 3,600 is equal to b. And if we simplify that, we get b is equal to 1 all over 30. That is b. Let's move on to C. Let's read it again. For the next jump, Joy wants to go 80 miles per hour. How far will the car go? Let's write our equation down so we can show our work. Now, let's substitute 1 over 30 for each b and 80 for each v. So now we have r is equal to 1 over 30 times 80 squared. Let's multiply. And 80 squared is 6,400. So now we have 1 over 30 times 6,400. We could simplify that, but let's write it as a decimal so we can better understand the value. So r is equal to 213.3 feet repeating. That is C. Now it is your turn. So go ahead and pause the video here so you can take your time to answer this question, and I'll show you the results in 3, 2, and 1. Did you get it correct? Fantastic. If not, there's always tomorrow.